I start to talk to you, in me, whatever strange it is, a certain mask starts to appear. Of course, a kind of Advaitic mask. I am not an Advaita person. You have an idea that I am an Advaita person. That you put your human mask, a Hati mask. About Hati mask. However, when you speak with your children or with your beloved, you are in a mask without mask. Put it. Put this mask, a mask without mask. Be as open as you can. I try to be open. And because mostly I communicate now with people that are close to me, sometimes it happens that when I communicate with my children, then, yeah, of course, a mask of the mother, because they are your children. Yes, it's true. I wanted to ask, it turns up that when I'm doing some activity and I pay attention, I try to keep attention at this inner feeling, unchanging feeling of I. Then it turns out that I fix on it, and the surrounding world, I don't see it. Yes, you are doing in a wrong way. When you are doing something, you just do. And this feeling has to appear during your activity. Then it will be natural. And you are doing it artificially, unnaturally, and you create surrounding world. Try to get out of this feeling and dive into your activity. And at a certain moment, you will notice that this feeling is also present there, but it is not done. It is like natural. It turns out that my mind is not occupied. Something is preventing from permanently watch what I'm doing. Either when I start to concentrate on this inner feeling, then it turns out that half day passed by and I don't remember myself. Yes, of course, it's nonsense, because you're doing some unnatural things. If you don't remember yourself, what kind of feeling is it? Because it is you. If you remain in you, you can forget whatever was happening around, but the understanding itself that I was always present, it doesn't disappear if you are aware of this feeling. Yes. If I turn back, I see that all things were done, and I didn't notice it. And the mind starts to find out, well, who was the doer? So he starts to rethink, try to understand that whenever understanding happened, and immediately the mind will think who did it, where I was at that time, and mind in a way is creating a parallel reality. And from where this parallel illusory reality appears, mind creates it, it rethinks, understanding happens immediately. And then mind tries to keep it, to improve it, and while mind is rethinking it, you are absent. And when you appear again in memory, this remained reality remains in the mind. And also, when this feeling of me appears, it is also always different. Yes, my mind made. The feeling of yourself cannot be different. Even intellectually, you understand that you are always you. And if this feeling is different, then it means then some idea came and there is a color, because the feeling of yourself is always the same, because you is always you. Years pass by, everything is changing, and you always remain yourself. And this is a feeling of total changelessness, immutability. I try to find words, but words are out of date. But mind in the beginning may try to grab this feeling and try to call this feeling of immutability, of permanence, and mind is trying to make a kind of alternative understanding for itself, just to remember. Then to be able to come back again and again to this feeling. And when the mind remembered this feeling, so it made an alternative feeling in order to be able to come back to it. And with time you can discover yourself in some stuff, because when the mind is doing it, it is upgrading its understanding, and it becomes a little bit different, and in the end it becomes totally different, and you understand that it's something wrong, but it happens quite, and mind remembered you sometimes like this, something like that, but all this is something wrong. You have to understand that if this feeling changed itself, then it is not right. So not that it changed, but in the beginning, when I come back to this feeling, it is quite ordinary. When you come back to this feeling, the person cannot come back to this feeling. This is the fact. I don't come back, but when I pay attention to it, it is the same thing. Look, it suddenly appears, and when it appears, and you always know that it is it. But then when you try to find it artificially, it tries to, the mind starts to sort out and tries to find this feeling. And the people who sit to meditate, they don't go immediately to this feeling. For instance, they observe their breath, and the process of it, they see this feeling, it appears, and then they switch to this feeling themselves. But if you try to find this feeling yourself, then it will be artificial. The mind cannot find this feeling because it never belonged to it. We just use this expression to remember yourself, but come back, but not directly, but through some action. When you start to do something, this feeling just appears. When you sit, you don't need to find this, you have to feel your body, your breathing, and suddenly this feeling appears. This is a paradox, it's a miracle that this feeling appears by itself. You cannot find it directly, because mind will always try to substitute. And if people are doing it for a long time, the mind knows by default, what satisfies it. But because what are people? People are just the mind, and if in the beginning the mind doesn't understand what is this feeling, the feeling of satisfaction, of peace, of quietness, then the mind will understand and will create this alternative feeling, which will be like this or like this a little bit. And if you notice that this feeling is different, the mind will just smooth out it, because there is an idea that this feeling has to be changeless, but it will not be able to stay for a long time in this feeling, because it is without life. And if there are some parts of life in this feeling, so then the person will remain again in this unsatisfied state. So I have never do some practices. It doesn't matter. Just this, in the beginning it appears, this feeling, like a neutral, like very ordinary. But if you continue to look through it, when the thoughts don't come, it starts to be alive by itself. And you have a feeling of pleasure in the heart, and it becomes more alive. But this is all mind. Of course it is mind, without doubt. Because the mind is looking in it, but who is looking in it? Mind. Mind is looking in it. It is, and the mind is sorting out thousands of variants to find exactly this one. Because mind is just looking for something, and then it is sorting out, and then it is satisfied, finding one. So you have to come back to the beginning. Yes, of course, when you're doing something, just do it. When you're walking, just walk. When you are sitting, just sit and understand that I'm sitting, I am not looking for any feeling. And automatically you can start to feel breathing in the body, because it is natural and the body is all the time is breathing. And you simply remain this way, like perceiving everything at the same time, and suddenly you feel that everything is colored by this feeling, and this feeling is always the same. Immediately it appears like this, poof. But it happens very rarely, especially in the beginning. Especially if you are looking for it, you will never find it, only an imitation. As if you are sitting to find it specially, and it is very important to understand what I am saying now, because all in the beginning are sitting and trying to find this feeling. And all the time they find something different. But because there is no possibility to exchange information, when you communicate and you say to a person that I feel myself, and he says the same thing, I feel myself. But this is different. When you are in this real feeling, you understand immediately who is also in this natural feeling and who is in the mind fucking invented. It is like felt immediately. Because you immediately start to feel that this everything, the nature is in this feeling, except the people. And some people also, of course, but they are so few that you may not pay attention to this exception. And there is no point to talk about this feeling. When you are in it, everything is clear. And even to ask, is it this feeling or not? Some people, they experience something and then they ask, is it this feeling or not? Of course not, because there is no confirmation needed there, because it is on the one hand so unusual, and on the other hand so natural, and that everything is totally understandable, especially for you, for this feeling. And for the mind, nothing is clear. If it is preserved somewhere there on the surface. But this kind of flashes I had. Of course, every person had this kind of flashes. And I have a feeling that sometimes it comes by itself, especially when you are in a process and not expecting be it a process of walking, sitting, riding, or even in toilet. When you are not expecting it, but if you are waiting for it, it will not be it if you are looking for it. But when you start to look for it, it may be very, very similar. But still it is not it. And sooner or later this feeling of unsatisfaction will know itself. Because this is feeling of total satisfaction in which you can remain forever, forever. There are no time, nothing. We may say it is life and death at the same time, in this moment. You cannot explain it. Even attempts to explain it in these books and these conversations, and the mind starts to look for it, but it is impossible. For the mind, it is something of the beyond. Even listening about it, many people don't understand what it is. But those who experience it, they start to understand, and they're looking for it, just committing this mistake to putting mind into this job, as if putting mind into practice, the mind that directs attention, because this is the mind which directs attention, and when it is directed inside, it is the same. It is when it is directed inside with the understanding of what it wants to discover there. When it is directed inside without knowing what it has to discover there, then it happens naturally. It is as if expecting something, but only conditionally, conventionally. I will do in this way and see what happens. And suddenly it bach, and suddenly it remembers the moment it appears, tries to keep it, protect it, and this is already a trap. So, it is better to all these memories not to put into practice, of course. You can put it in practice only when you are totally in the mind fucking as an instrument. When you are totally in mind fuck, and suddenly you remember there is a feeling of myself, and just starting from it, you can very fast remove all these voluntary, involuntary thoughts. So, and you remain like this and feel what is happening around you without expecting anything. not expecting that this feeling will appear again. And it will appear, it will come up for sure when the mind is quiet in its expectations and will be satisfied with what is with this reality, to see everything, to hear everything, to feel everything in a human way. And then Bach, and suddenly this inhuman appears. I have now less and less this kind of attempts when I open. So I become different. Of course. I have a more alive feeling. I became more alive. Yes. More alive. And more joyous, more pleasant, more quiet. Like now. If you'll not expect from this conversation anything and allow the words just to flow without an attempt to understand. And everything that is necessary will be understood, and whatever is not necessary will not be understood, and you will not come back to it, you will not stop, not from understanding and not from non-understanding, just you will continue and continue to listen to this conversation. Yes, when I talk to you, I feel that if I look again this satsang, I don't remember what we were talking about. Yes, of course, there is no need to listen again to it, because I am talking all the time the same thing, maybe with different words, and I have nothing more to say. I want to say, then when you are talking, as you say, the same thing, but when you direct it to me, when you say to me directly, it is different. It's like it is diving deep inside me. But when you're talking with someone else, it's different. Maybe it has to dive inside the another person. But better don't come back to whatever was said. Just better to switch to another conversation, to another satsang.